today.
Okay.
Okay, this is Hot Springs, Montana, April 12th of 2016. We're interviewing Dale Adams, longtime Lone Pine resident. Where were you born, Dale?
Pablo, east of Pablo in some house out there, I don't know.
With a midwife?
Apparently, I don't know.
So probably.
Yeah, I don't remember.
And where, when about?
Well, it's September 17, 1941.
Okay.
Makes me 74 years old.
And your parents were?
Harold and Twyla Adams.
And your grandparents?
Fred and Josie Newgard, and I can't even remember, Charles Adams was on my paternal side, and I had Ruth was my wasn't Dad's mother, it was his stepmother. I can't remember his real mother's name. I never met her.
So did you know anything about your great-grandparents or anything?
Well, on my maternal side, my grandfather came from Norway, Oslo, Norway.
Oh.
And my grandma came from on the border of Germany and Holland. I don't know the name, but I think she was actually born in America, but she was only 16 and Grandpa was 32 when they got married. So.
And so...
They only had 10 kids.
Did you ever find out why they came to America and where they landed? Did they...
Well, he came on Ellis Island.
And probably into Chicago then, or?
I don't know how he ended up in Libby as a logger, but that's where...
They immigrated east or west then?
Yeah, and I don't know a lot about Grandma. She lived in Bozeman for around that Holland settlement for a while, so I don't know too much about her. But then they bought a farm over east of Pablo, and he logged and did whatever he could to survive, I guess.
That's what they did in those days.
And they had few cows, and they had a lot of that land over there was a lot of pine trees, so there wasn't much pasture for cows. But they would Grandma would take them out on the road every day. They just had milk cows, a few milk cows, and the neighbor put out some arsenic to poison the grasshoppers and killed all but one of their cows.
Oh.
That was a pretty big blow. You couldn't afford to buy them, so and so but Grandpa was on my dad's side was a big rancher when the Depression hit. He had about 300 cows in North Dakota, and they ended up government coming buying most of them for $15 or $20 a head. And they supposedly, everybody said that they loaded them up in the big, they called big trucks in those days. And they backed them up the Mississippi River and shot them as they came out.
Anyway, huh?
Oh, yeah. Same with the pigs and the sheep. They said nobody could afford to transfer. Well, there was sheepmen that loaded two or three boxcars of sheep and shipped them back to Chicago, and they got a bill from the railroad for $2.49. The sheep didn't cover the freight.
And that they told you about all those bad days in the Depression then?
Yeah.
And they were in Dakota, did you say?
Yeah, he was Dickinson, North Dakota.
So were they in the Dirty Dust Bowl then, too, on top of it?
Dad said you could get on a horse and ride all day and never open a gate, because the only thing that grew was tumbleweeds, and then the dust blew over the tumbleweeds And he said the cows had nothing to eat, you know, and it wasn't, you couldn't haul semi-load of hay in, you know, there wasn't such a thing. And yeah, he said they learned to turn their plates upside down on the table because by morning there'd be that much grit on it, you know. And he said our beds were covered with dirt, you know, and he said it'd come one day, the wind would blow this way and you get all as deep as they plowed, everything just blew off. And then the next day the wind would come from the other direction. He said we got our dirt back, but we wasn't sure whose it was. Yeah, he came out here on the train. Dad came out here on the train. He said there was about 400 guys on the train, just coming west.
Yeah.
Someplace trying to find a place where they could stand in a soup line or something, you know. But he ended up over in cutting wood for us. Did you ever know? She's been dead quite a while. I can't come up to the name now. But anyway, he worked all winter for them, and he got his provender. You know, he just got food and place to stay.
Yeah, in those days.
And he was supposed to get $12 a month for getting out wood, but he said they didn't have any money either. McKenzie, Mabel McKenzie. And I don't know if that was her name when she came here or not, but she died here. It's probably been over 20 years ago. I can remember a little bit, but but she was living at that time when he lived with them. It was Mackenzie. Her name was Mackenzie, and but it was something different when she moved over here, so I can't remember what that.
So he cut the wood here in the valley.
No, it was over by Pablo.
Pablo.
That's where he met Mom.
So, and why was she there? Teaching school?
She was raised there. That's where her folks lived.
So,
Yeah, she was going to go, but she had actually had a scholarship to go to the University of Missoula and had planned to go, and I don't know what happened. She never did go, but she made sure all of us kids got to go to school.
and so, when did they move to Lone Pine?
45. We moved here in town. We lived in town for about a year, and then Hayworth went on a vacation or a trip. We didn't call vacation then, you called it a trip. and Hayworth wanted somebody to stay out there for the winter, so folks moved out there. When they got back from their vacation, Earl, Minnie said, we're not moving back on the farm. So folks bought it they paid $5,000 for 80 acres. And I couldn't prove it, but I'm pretty sure they got it from my uncle that was killed on Iwo Jima, because Mom was a beneficiary of his life insurance policy. He got a big policy of $10,000. Mom got half of that, and she had to divide the rest up with her brothers and sister.
And Hayworth moved to town and built apartments.
Yeah, they had apartments out there by the creek there.
Yeah.
And they were there for quite a while.
Yeah.
But I can still remember Earl he was funny. And he's always kidding her. They were little short people. I don't know if you remember.
I remember.
I think she was about 5'8" or 9", and he was just over 5 foot. And I can remember as 8 years old, I was almost as tall as he was. But yeah, he was funny. They'd been in a real serious car wreck. We used to tell about that. He was laying in the corner room, and they had him in the same room, and the doctor said, well, we'll work on this one here because she's going to survive, but that guy over there ain't going to live. He said that made me prove it to him. Yeah, but I don't know if you remember, his face was quite crooked, and his nose was kind of turned. We used to call him, he almost looked like he was a heroin, but he wasn't. because it had really disfigured his face, but he didn't let it bother him. Yeah, they probably had those apartments for 20 years or so. I know it's a long time.
So then you spent your years before school out at Lone Pine at the farm there?
Yeah, we lived in that house as you come, that far street right by the Hot Springs Creek where it comes, the little trickles down there, you know, the little house is right there, and they got is it McDuffie's or somebody that lives there in a bigger house, but that little tiny house is still there.
No, is it?
Dad came here, he worked for John Camp and the Bees at first, when we lived in town.
And so you ran around town then before you started school?
Oh, I don't remember if I did. I was only 3 years old. So.
Oh, and then they moved out to the farm when you were 3?
I remember that was the first place I was ever at where I could open the door, because Hayward's were short people, so they had the doorknobs down. I thought that was pretty cool. I could open that door to go outside, because always before, you know, your little guy couldn't reach the door.
So where did you start school at then?
Lone Pine.
In Lone Pine, first grade?
But must have been, well, I was 7, so it'd been 48 probably. But I can remember that was a winter of winters. I can remember the school bus, the snow had drifted right over the top of the fence posts, and it was just like a rock. You could almost walk a horse on top of it.
I remember that.
Yeah,
when you couldn't see the post office.
Yeah.
Post.
Well, they didn't plow them like they did now either. And I don't know how the buses got through. Because and the roads were low. They were, you know, Pat DeLong had all those roads built up so that the snow blew over. That time it just filled them in. And it was, you didn't have 4-wheel drives or, you know, you chained up or you didn't go, you know, and even in a car. And I can remember going, it got down to 40 below and stayed that way for a little while. It was pretty cold.
Do you remember your teacher, first grade?
Yeah, Mrs. Pedersen.
Oh, Mrs. Pedersen in first grade.
First 3 grades. Yeah, she was very lenient compared to the others. But she was a smart teacher because she always had the older kids tutor the little kids. When you had, you know, 7 or I think there was probably 30 in the room at the most, and the older kids would tutor the young kids, you know, and spelling and reading and math and everything, you know. And I had Joan Swisher. I don't know if you remember Joan Swisher.
Yes.
She tutored me. She was I thought she was smart because she was straight ahead of me. Yeah.
So after 3rd grade, and well, what did your folks, when they started with the farm, did they buy milk cows there?
Yeah.
And horses and...
We had a team of horses, and as soon as we got a tractor, Dad got rid of the horses. He says, I can feed 5 cows for what that team of horses eats.
So then you hay in the summer?
Yeah.
And did you help a lot?
Well, yeah, when I was 7, 8 years old, he had me out there pitching hay on the hay boat. We had, I don't know if you remember, you probably remember those boom pole stackers. They put a slip on the bottom. It was kind of a circle, and it had 4 ropes came out the 4 corners, and then you put whatever hay you figured that the horses could pull up, you put on there, and then you put another one on top. It was probably 2 feet or 3 feet, whatever you figured that the horses could pull up, and then you went back to the stack, but they pulled it on the ground just so there's a slip with her. boat, runners. And then you pull those 4 corners up and hooked them in a hook on a cable to the boom pole stacker, and then the horses pulled it up, and then you had a long rope on the end, and you pulled the hay over by the stack, and then you pulled that rope and tripped it, and then dropped the hay on the hay and dust and
That's how it worked.
Rattlesnakes or anything. We didn't have any rattlesnakes around here.
We had bull snakes
Yeah.
at Lone Pine.
Yeah.
I remember we stacked one of them too once.
And then whoever's on the stack, Dad always had a long ladder because we did it all by ourselves most of the time. And then you got those 2 loads, and you went out, but I can stack more hay in an hour, and we could probably stack in a week in those days. And I don't ever touch it.
So,
Yeah, it was, everything was pretty primitive compared to what it is now. I mean,
so then when you got the tractor, you used different type of stacking.
we put it in with the buck rake and an overshot stacker. You pushed the hay with the buck rake, and then you drove up onto the stacker and then backed away from it. And then the horses or Dad used a pickup most of the time to pull it up with a cable, and then you throw it on the stack.
So how old were you when you were on the tractor?
About 8.
8.
8 or 9. Yeah.
Yes.
Dad got me on the first day he got the tractor. He got me on it.
And it was a brand new, did it have steel wheels?
It was a 8N, one of those old 8N tractors.
With steel wheels?
No, it was rubber tire. It was a 4-speed. They had 8N were 3-speed, 9N were 4 speeds. And we had a 4-speed, so we could really go down the road compared to a team of horses.
So about how many cows did your folks milk then out there?
I can remember milking about 12 to 13, and we could dig it up to 54 at one time.
That you milked?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. How did you milk them? Not by hand?
No, we had a DeLaval bucket that sat beside the cow, and just put the milker on. They learned to. When I first started milking, everybody said you got to milk from the right side, but most gentle cows don't care. But
And where did you sell the milk?
when it came into town, I can't remember the creamery. Dick Scott was a milk hauler. Marlon Crone was a milk hauler. But Dick Scott hauled milk for most of the time we milked cows. And he hauled it to Kalispell and they processed it up here and they brought it back to Plains and delivered it in Hot Springs and Plains and wherever. And yeah, but Ferris Blanchard, I think it was Ferris Blanchard was on one in Plains, and they had a couple different guys in town. I can't. Owens was one guy, and I can't remember his first name. But Johnny Andrews married the girl. I can't remember.
Lynn, wasn't it Lynn Owens?
Yeah, Lynn Owens. But I know he was one of the guys that worked in the creamery, but I can't remember I can remember a couple different other guys, but I can't remember their name.
So how long did they milk cows out there?
We milked until 67, but we were one of the last ones to milk. We bought Cannon's cow. Blackburn bought Cannon's cows, and then a few years later we bought Blackburn's cows. And then, but then later on, Heidegger and some of those guys milked up there for a while. But you gotta milk hundreds of cows anymore. There's so much expense and so much work that you can't. It's hard to raise it. You gotta have one guy running the cows and somebody else doing the crops, because you just can't there's not enough hours. They say long days, the days are the same length, the hours you put in. But there's only 1 or 2 dairies, I think, over in, even in the Mission anymore. Because there was a family one there, and they had 5 family members, and they just couldn't make it.
Yeah, I don't think the milk ever sees air. I mean, it just goes right in from, right into the big tanks now.
Yeah, you got a big, most of them have a big pipe that's got we call it a sock, but it's a filter, and the milk is pumped through that right into the tank, and then it's cooled right. It's tried to be cooled as soon as you can,
Yeah.
But I don't know if you remember Ed Hermas that used to have dairy down between Plains and Paradise, or the other side of Paradise. And he had that water that comes across the creek there. He had a big trough in there, and he had that Guernsey cows, and there was probably a third of the milk was cream. People just come in there on their honor and buy milk. And he just had it sitting in that trough of water float, water circulating through there. I thought that was pretty. And an inspector came and said, "Well, that's not legal. It's milk's only 40 degrees. It should be 38." I thought, he finally got disgusted and sold his cow.
Well, they got on his case, and then they were bugging him all the time.
Well, the inspector told us one time. He said, "We'll be glad when you don't have any small dairies." Yeah. Well, if you're in debt so much, you can go ahead and force people to do things just because you got to pay it, Where the little guys, a lot of these guys in the valley are working out besides trying to milk a few cows, and so it's.
So did you raise pigs then too?
No.
Did you raise pigs too?
No, Dad didn't. Dad had pigs in Dakota. He didn't. He said we didn't up at that. They used to buy those broomtails, the horses on the government horses. And Granddad would lead one of them out in the pig pen and shoot it. Pigs Dad said they're just like a pack of wolves. He said I didn't. He said it was cheap food, but he said I didn't like that method.
So did your mom raise a garden then?
Oh yeah, she had a garden right every year. Some years it's better than others, of course, but.
And she canned and froze.
Yeah. Well, we used to take Mom used to, we didn't have a freezer till I was probably up in grade school quite a ways, and she'd take it to Lone Pine, and they had I don't know if you remember that freezer in the bottom of the store, had drawers, big drawers, and you put corn or whatever in there, I can remember Mom said, "Boy, this is sure easier to can than, freezing a lot." And then Mom started working at the hospital, and so we transferred to Mercantile, LaRue's, and because she was in town anyway, and we had it there, and then I can remember eventually getting a big old cumbersome freezer, and boy, I thought that you don't have to go to town, you have to go to town every 2 weeks or so because you used up your stuff, Yeah, it was. I got 3 freezers, only one of me.
So you're still raising cows then and milking?
No, I haven't milked a cow in 20 years.
So you're raising beef cattle then now?
I just got Angus.
So after the 3rd grade, where did you go to school?
We went to church school. They started, or 7th Adventist Church started church school, and they had Johnson lived over where Pat DeLong lived for a long time. And they called it the honey house, but it was a little one-room building. We had school there for 2 years, and then we had to move it over to the Hillman house, where it used to be the Hillman place, and we had it there for 2 years, or 1 or 2 years, and then they had Betty Swinney and Edwardsons and Kenny's had kids in town, so they moved it to the back of the church. And they had it there until we ran out of kids, I guess.
So you graduated from 8th grade?
Yeah. Then I went to Mount Ellis, Bozeman.
And that was kind of like college?
No, it's high school.
High school at Mount Ellis, okay. And how was high school? Did you get to play sports?
No, there was not much sports in those days. It was work.
Yeah.
We played a little basketball, and, but there wasn't much. We had a teacher that taught school in India, and he was all for soccer. I didn't know. Kicking in the shins, I didn't like that too.
You had awful sore knees there for legs for a while, don't you? So did you go on to college?
No. Yeah, I did, but I didn't finish. I got married.
And then you moved back to the ranch then?
Well, yeah, I worked for a year as a bricklayer, or as a hod carrier, and then I moved back to farming. That's when we got more cows, and got up to 54 cows.
And so when your dad was working for Hillman's bee factory, was it?
Camps?
Was it Camps?
Yeah, John Camp.
So where was his bees located?
Well, it was right on the corner of, I don't even know what that street is, but if you go by our church towards south, right on the corner, there's a house. So there used to be a big, he had a big thing, I don't know, a shed there for his bees and stuff. And Morgan's bought it later, and they moved it out here where it's at now.
Well, they were in town quite a while though.
Yeah, they was in town there.
Yeah, it caught on fire, and then they moved out there.
Oh, I didn't remember that part, but now I remember Jim Cook telling about that place where Merritt's lived. There was a guy by the name of Angel. He died before we came here. And he worked at the gravel pit up where Halverson's, or up towards on Mosier, and he walked to work every day, and he brought a cottonwood tree, I don't know about every day, but he brought all those trees along Merritt's Road there that are starting to die off.
Mm-hmm.
He planted all those trees there. And he also, Jim Cook said he was a working this guy. He said he leveled that whole 40 with a wheelbarrow and a shovel. So he'd run the water out there as far as it going, and he'd dig a ditch and then he'd shovel the ground so the water would run across there. He said, I thought, man, how... And he said he'd be working all day, and he'd be out there sometime midnight at night out there working. Then he died, and then Dick Taylor lived where we live on a Livingston place. And I don't know if Dick was ever married before, but anyway, Dick and Ludi, anyway, they got married, and Dick moved over there, and then Livingston's moved here, and they lived in Camas. He taught school for a year or two, I don't know.
I think so. I think it was high school, wasn't it?
Yeah. And then he bought that 40 that we live on, and the two Scotchmen have a hard time making a deal. But Mr. Livingston wouldn't give him over $3,000 for that 40 acres, and Dick Taylor wouldn't let him have the house and half of the barn. So Mr. Livingston tore half the barn down And they moved the house over on Merritt's Corner, and it sat there for Dick Taylor never did anything with it. Mitt Royfield, it's funny what's left of it sitting over there by him. He kind of put a cap, made a kind of a calf pen out of it, or, you know. I always thought that was funny.
Well, it was, yeah. Yeah, Livingston was quite a teacher, I think. I think the kids really gave him a runaround.
Yeah, he had no discipline.
Yeah.
And they locked him in the closet and all kinds of stuff.
Did he drive a Model T?
I don't remember what he drove.
Well, I remember them putting his automobile up on the schoolhouse. He came out from school and it was up on the schoolhouse. I don't know which kids did it, but
Yeah.
because I wasn't there then.
Yeah. You wouldn't help with that. Yeah, I know that his wife, after a couple of years, his wife would let him teach him more.
So-
But the kids, he was, well, if you kind of look at somebody that was born in the 1800s, you know, they have he had a mustache. I don't think he had a beard, but he was typical old time looker, you know, real cut up. But he didn't have any discipline. The kids just did what they wanted, and anyways, his wife was an invalid, but she said, "Guy, we got enough money to stay home." You know, they had property in North Dakota they sold, and well, I think he had the first nickel he ever had when he died too. And Carol was his daughter. Was just they were.
I think she's still alive, isn't
No,
she?
she
I don't think
Oh,
so.
did she?
she died a couple
Yeah.
of years ago.
Oh, did she?
Yeah, Debbie and Polly took care of her out their place
Oh, okay, that's right.
yeah, it's been a couple of years or
Oh.
so. Well, she died shortly before that real cold weather we had, 33 below here, right around that time.
Yeah. I walked down the street one day and she was up on her roof with a stick cleaning her chimney.
Yeah.
She couldn't hardly stand up stable on flat ground.
Yeah, I was amazed. She was, I don't think she ever got up to 90 pounds in her whole life, you know. Yeah, she was actually a pretty interesting person, but she was so deaf she couldn't hear much. And that really took away from her. But if you get in her house with her and talk, she was quite interesting. She says, I can remember saying one time, "Kids having kids."
Well, that's true. That's still a way, yeah. So, what were your memories of Lone Pine? Did you get to go to the fair up there? And a circus? They had a circus up there?
No, I went to a circus in town here once.
Oh, did you? Oh,
They had a circus right where the log house, or just the side of the log house there. They had a couple of different times they came in with monkeys, and I don't remember horses, but there was mostly small stuff, you know, and they had, but I can remember one monkey climbing a pole and clapping his hands, and I thought, couldn't have been more than 7 or 8 years old, and it was getting to where it was too expensive to come around to small towns, you know. And by the time you loaded all them up, you know, and everything, and they didn't charge much, of course there wasn't much money, so. But I don't remember much about it, I just remember going in.
going to the circus, huh?
But-
And Homesteaders Days? Did you get to come to Homesteaders?
Oh, yeah, we can. I even rode a horse in there one time.
In-
But it was
Into town or in the parade?
in the parade. Well, I worked when I worked for the rest home, you remember Jim Grinder? You probably never heard of Jim Grinder. Anyway, I had him on the back of the truck, and he was 100, I don't know, I think he died at 107 or something like that.
That's right, yeah.
But, yeah, he was on the back of the truck. He was an interesting, if you could ever get him to talk, you know. But he helped round up the bison when they shipped them to Canada.
Oh. And now they're shipping them back.
Yeah.
Yeah, that they see if we need them. Well, if they keep them brucellosis free, I don't mind so much, but when they're turning loose and, you know, it affects guys' livelihoods. If you got cattle anywhere around them, they'll pick it up from them.
But I think they vaccinate them now, don't they?
Well, they should be doing that in the park, but they don't. And, you know, when they come out of the park, they run them in corrals and check them, and a lot of them got brucellosis, and they need to be eliminated and start somewhere.
Yeah.
Because if you ever get on fever, it's like you got flu for about months. You can't figure out what it is. It doesn't affect the meat, but it affects the milk, and it's in all ungulates get it. Cows, sheep, goats, deer, elk, you know, all that stuff.
So what else did you do on Homesteaders Day? Just right in the parade? Did you go to the rodeos?
Went to rodeo, yeah.
And they had a carnival sometimes.
What's that?
They had a carnival sometimes.
Yeah. See, I don't remember a lot about it, but I remember going to them.
Yeah. How about swimming?
Well, I took swimming lessons, yeah. That's where I learned to swim, up in the swimming pool.
So you didn't swim in the ditches out at Lone Pine, though?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, did you?
Yeah.
The reservoir, too?
No, never swam in the reservoir. We were, every once in a while, somebody drowned up there on the west side, and our mothers weren't real fond of that. I can remember Lloyd Olbeck drowned up there, and there was another kid that I didn't know.
I didn't think that one was in the reservoir. That was in a ditch, wasn't it?
Is that one of the trips?
Well, but he didn't.
I think he drowned in a lake. But
Yeah, and a Rusma girl drowned in the lake.
Yeah, that was Minna's sister and her husband and the little girl, and she was pregnant at the time.
Yeah.
All drowned. Well, Alvin was in that boat with them.
Was he? Oh.
Him and his sister-in-law, the only two that survived that. Yeah, that was a nasty deal.
Yeah, that one was.
That was one of the worst ones.
Well, the Tripp boy, or not the Tripp, the Olvik boy, that one was a kind of a rough deal on the community, too.
Well, it was tough on his dad, because he wanted to go to North Dakota, and his dad made him stay home and do the chores. And that was, I think it bothered old Ace the rest of the, you know, to think that. But Lloyd was a good athlete too. He was
Oh, yes.
a good swimmer and all that, you know. He just got cramps or something, I don't know what the heck happened. I can remember when he was only about 16, I think. So somewhere around there.
Didn't they claim the Rusmas got tangled in seaweed or something?
Fishing line or something.
Something.
She was a good swimmer too, but her husband couldn't swim. And he almost drowned Alvin trying to get Alvin's. And then all they had was those little cushions. They didn't have life jackets like they do now. And Alvin was only about 12 or so.
Something.
And he got a hold of Alvin's shirt, and he just went frantic. If they told him if the boat tipped over, if they just leave it and hang on to the side, Alvin's sister-in-law swam to shore and got help. Well, he panicked and tried to climb on the boat. Well, as soon as it tipped over, filled with water and went down, and that was it.
Because that was Frank Lee's cabin up there on the lake, too.
Yeah.
Yeah. So how about fairs at Plains? Did you ever get to?
Oh, yeah. We went to fair every year.
Did you take animals or anything? Did you take 4-H?
I didn't take 4-H. Dad said, "You're too busy. We got too much milk." But yeah, we always went to the fair. went to rodeo a few times, Mom wasn't too much for rodeos.
Did you get to go to movies at the Naya Theater?
No, I didn't get to do, it was me and Dad doing the milking, so we didn't do, and then you had to start pitching hay as soon as you got the cows milked, so there wasn't a lot of extracurricular activity. We camped a few times out, but it was such a hassle. 'Cause
Yeah.
you had to either milk before you left or come home early and milk, one or the other. And so I can remember Mom loading up the pickup and going up to Flathead Lake, and we all went over there and stayed the night. And of only time in probably 10 years it rained that night. We got soaked, and then we had to come home and milk, and it was, in those days it wasn't like you get in the car and go 70 miles down the road, it's a 45, 50 mile an hour trip, and it's an hour there and an hour back, and then you got 3 hours of milking, and so that was pretty much our hobby.
So, when you were in school, didn't you, at your Adventist schools, didn't they take you on picnics there when you were kids?
Yeah, we went to picnics.
Didn't you have a few fun things there?
Oh yeah, we got to go on
Field trips?
field trips when I can't remember going much, but I remember we had them.
Did you have regular teachers, or did some of them?
Yeah, they had to be certified. They had Mrs. Johnson and Mrs. Vining, and that was the main two teachers when I was there. And Mrs. Johnson's, they actually lived on that Pat DeLong's place for several years, and she taught, and then Mrs. Vining came, I don't remember, 5th, 6th grade, I think, or something.
So did quite a few of you kids go to their schools there?
We had 11 at the,
11?
yeah, at the most, from 7 to 11.
So you don't have any other memories of school or Lone Pine?
Well, I didn't let school interfere with my education that much.
And how about your other things? Did you get into a lot of mischief too? You wouldn't have had
No.
time, I don't think.
I was perfect. Just ask my sister.
Well, I don't know. I was shocked that Alvin Lee, him and what was the Ward Rhinewinner were on speaking terms. So, did you know Ward too? Don't look at me like that.
I never had much. I never came to town that much. So, yeah, I remember Ward. He was a Statue of Liberty in town. Yeah, he was a cop there for, I don't know, a long time.
Years and years, yeah.
But he was actually a pretty good guy. He tried to put an image of being ornery than it really was. But, well, I can remember George Kincaid had a shop out here. And he was the one that hyped up all the high school kids' cars.
Oh, did he really?
Yeah,
Oh.
he had a little, I can't remember, most of the kids were a little older than I was and he had a shop where it's kind of wide across from the veterinary clinic, it's a bit of a white spot. He had a shop there, and he was, I bet you old Art Argo probably could tell.
Stories on,
And Marshall Holmberg and some of those guys. But this used to be the drag out here, boy.
I thought Main Street was, but.
They used to, Johnny, I think it was Johnny Argo and Gutlich. I can't remember his first name.
Frank Gutlich?
Frank.
It wasn't Frank, it was brother.
I didn't know his brother.
There was Leonard.
His brother was killed. Him and I'm pretty sure Johnny Argo raced clear out here, and one was gonna go towards Plains, the other was gonna turn in. Anyway, he hit that, used to be a high bank out there. He hit that bank, killed him.
That was Scott Blanch.
Yeah.
It had to be Leonard, I think, wasn't it?
I can't remember his
I
first
think it was
name.
Leonard got lynched. But I didn't realize he got killed out there.
I'm not sure, you know, but they were, yeah, they were evidently, well, some of them old cars, they wouldn't wind up very fast, but when they did, they whipped right along, you know. And the Hudsons and some of those little cars, you know. But I can remember when, before we moved to Lone Pine, or to the farm, we lived in that little house, and Frank Gutledge, his grandmother, had a bunch of rabbits out there, and we'd go out and help Frank pull dandelions for them, rabbits, and grass and stuff. But I thought they had a lot of them. I don't know how many that she had. It looked like a lot of them to me. But I was before, you know, I was probably, couldn't have been more than 3 or 4 years old.
So what else do you remember from around here?
Well, I remember, do you remember Laverne Donville?
Uh-huh,
He was a character.
yeah.
He had to be married to Nancy, I guess. Johnny, this was long before we came here, because Johnny Taylor had that place, just you come up the valley from Little Bitter River on the left there. He had that place, and they went to Polson or someplace with a team of horses. They lived over where, no, I'm not even sure what house they lived in, but anyway, Laverne Donville went over there, and he knew they'd be coming home and want to build a fire on the other side of their house. And of course, he saw that coming, he whipped the horses up, you know, to get home, and it was way out in the field, but it was in line with the road, so it looked like it was his house. But, and then Laverne trotted across the field laughing, and I guess Johnny Taylor didn't think it was that much.
I bet not.
But we had Mr. McCoy was the principal all the time when I was there. And we used to have hot lunch in the upstairs, and that, I'm amazed that building didn't fall down. You could just jump on the floor and the whole upstairs would just shake, you know. And the cooks would tell us, "You kids don't do that." Mrs. McHenry, Doak McHenry's wife, Ruth, yeah, she was the head cook there for all that I remember, and then she had, I can't remember who the other cooks were, but of course it was 15 cents for a meal, so if we didn't have 15 cents, we brought lunch.
Yeah. Do you remember the Lone Pine store then?
Oh yeah, yeah. I remember Halverson had it first, and then Herzig's bought it, and then Sweeney's bought it, and then Brass's bought it.
And then it was moved out to the corner.
Yeah. Yeah, it was, if you had a penny, you go in and buy a piece of candy. And yeah, there was, well, the store was, Halverson's, I think, moved to the, across from the school, but it used to be out there by the Lone Pine Tree, I guess.
Oh, was it?
I wouldn't swear to that, but I'm pretty sure Bud Brass could tell you.
Oh, yeah.
That's what I read.
But that Lone Pine tree's still standing there, but it's been dead for a long time. But it was there, that store was there, but across from the school all the time. I can, you know.
Yeah, the mail came there, and there was quite a mail route through the valley.
Well, it had gas. They buried the tanks under the store. I think, I don't know if they ever dug them out, but that's one reason they moved, because they could smell gas leaks, and.
I think they probably had to dig them out.
Yeah, I suppose.
Rules at that time.
47 minutes.
How many?
47?
So you remember a lot of bad winters around here.
Well, I remember the first winter I remember is 48. And I went through that, I think that was the first year I was at school. And then 50, I don't know, it was 55 or 6 was a bad winter too. And then 68 and 9 was a bad winter. We had cold weather. Yeah. And then 96 was another bad winter. We didn't have so much cold weather, but we had plenty of snow to deal with. Those are and then we had that one day here a couple of years ago where it got down to 33 below, but it didn't last very long, which was good as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
So 96 was that bad winter.
What's that?
96 was the bad winter,
yeah.
all the snow.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, I had feeding 200 cows and I think I only fed on about 3 acres all winter.
But none of them starved though.
No, well, you drive out and when the tractor starts to spin, you dump your hay and then cows would look at it. Well, I guess that's our choice. We don't want to eat. I guess we're going to go out there. They'd pack that down, and then the next day you kind of go a little further. And yeah, that was. Well, the snow was up. You could just see the top wire on the fence.
I can remember the highway crews trying to keep the roads clear that year. I didn't remember what year it was, but I remember the crews that were working day and night trying to keep the highways open.
But those are the only really bad winters I can remember. I can remember Christmas, getting a new sled and no snow.
So what are you doing these days then for hobbies and
My hobbies, my cows, pretty much.
still working with the cows? I suppose, are you done calving now then?
No, I don't start till March,
Oh.
10th of March. I got tired of carrying calves in, and I was the year that Richard Brongy was killed, I got mashed by a cow, and I said, this is enough of that. If I hadn't had the pickup door open, she'd have probably got me on the ground, but I was taking her calf into the pickup, she just came right over top of the calf, and I had the door open, so she roughed me up in the pickup and finally backed off. But I told the bird, I said, I'm 70, or close to that. I said, if I get down, get hurt, I may never walk again, And I said the calves will be smaller, but there'll be a few more of them.
Yeah, the ranchers took them in the house to put the bathtub.
I had 7 of them in the shed in the house, and not in the house. I never took them in the house. I had sheds where I could put them in a water tank with an empty water tank with heat lamps over them, and they warm up pretty good in there. But then when you take them back out, some of them old cows, the calf doesn't smell the same. You have to fight them to get them back on the cow. And, it's them days of carrying them calves around there.
So how many are you have now, cows?
55 cows.
How many?
55.
That's quite a few for your age then.
Well, you can work about as much as you want.
So do you get to take any trips anywhere? Do you ever go for?
Well, I don't do much traveling. I was going to go back east this year, and then the cattle prices didn't stay up, so they stayed up pretty good, but not. But my brother wants me to fly back to Michigan, and I got a friend in New Hampshire who wants me to come back there. I don't know. I don't know if I want to go that bad or not.
Tell them to come out.
They do. That's the bad part. Yeah, you gotta come back in.
Yeah.
Yeah, the guy from New Hampshire, he comes out about every other year. Tries to coax me to come back there.
So what does he do back there? That's,
He's a teacher, he teaches school.
oh. And your brother, what does he do?
He teaches too in Andrews, one of our Adventist schools there in Michigan. And he also works on an 850 cow dairy in his spare time.
Yeah.
But he teaches egg courses and stuff. That's something I think this country's lacking, is that younger people getting interested in agriculture, because I'm not real crazy about China's food myself.
No.
I don't like the lid they put in.
No, most of the kids think milk comes from a box or a jug in the store. And maybe it does, maybe it's all facey.
Well, you wonder sometimes.
Well, they make it out of almonds now,
Yeah, rice.
and it only takes a gallon of water to make one almond. So I don't know how many gallons of water it takes to make that half gallon or that gallon of milk.
Well, it takes about between 70 and 80 pounds of food for a cow to produce 100 pounds of milk. So, yeah, it's a big factor, you know,
Yeah.
as you know, another 20 years, you know, agriculture is going to change a lot just to feed our people. And, yeah, it's, yeah, when I was a kid, you didn't think about somebody being a vegetarian, you know. You know, now it's, you know.
They can pick and choose.
Yeah, well, commerce is such a, you know, you can buy stuff that's out of Mexico and be up here in a couple of days, you know. But we can ship calves, you can load calves out of here and have them back in Sioux City or in the next day, you know. And it's cheaper to take cows to the feed than it is to bring the feed to the cows. Plus you got better climate.
Yeah.
You know, you feed in Montana, if you get a tough winter, it's hard to get gain on those cattle. You know, I know they keep talking about getting more feeders in Montana, but you get in eastern Montana, you get them high winds and that stuff, and you're just lucky if they survive.
Yeah, a lot of them don't sometimes.
You get them in these warm climates. Of course, they don't do good when it's hot either. This is actually a pretty good climate for livestock, but you get a hard winter and it's, you know, you get frozen feet and all that kind of stuff, and so it's you know, some of these big feedlots in Texas and Oklahoma and those places, they got 20 to 50,000 head of cattle. You know, and if they only make $1 on each head, and if you pay way more, you know, if you pay like $2 a pound, and then when you sell it, it only brings $1.50. Well, you've got to make up that difference in gain somewhere to come out. You know, and that's why they like the same kind of cattle all the time. So when they sort them to go to slaughter, all those cattle go out of that lot instead of having to take riders in there to sort this one and that one. That's one reason some of these breeds aren't very popular, because they don't finish at the same time. Yeah, they don't like horns,
Right.
because it takes more space. You know, there's all kinds of, and they like the same color. And once you take the hide off, you know, it looks the same on the plate. But if the market's up, they don't pay attention to that. But if the market's down, well, they cut you forever. If it's got a little white on its belly, it's probably Holstein or, you know, or something else. Yeah, it's crazy. But if they all come out the same color coming out of the truck, well, you know, look at them, you know, the guy that probably looks at him doesn't even know what he's looking at anyway. He's probably got a degree in animal science and never seen a cow.
Probably in 20 years, they won't even know what a good steak tastes like.
Yeah. Well, if you want to, the guy went down to Brazil and he ordered steak down there. And he said, boy, it's expensive. And he said, well, put it on your Visa card. And he said, I did, and it fit.
That's good.
But those, I don't know if you've seen pictures of the cattle they got down there. They look like they're about this wide. But and they stand under those pampas where there's, they got all this shade, and they don't even see them for probably a year or two because there's no winter. But they stand the heat, so that's why they're popular down there. But they say when you cut them up, there's nothing to them. They survive, but
They're little.
but they got they got some huge ranches down there. They sometimes they have 20,000 head of cattle in one ranch, and they got endless much of, I don't know if it's private property or if it's government, but they farm down there. I mean, there's thousands of acres. They have these tractors with the GPS on them.
Right.
One guy runs a tractor, and there's got 2 or 3 others in the field. He's running those, and they go for maybe several miles in one direction before they have to turn around and come back and go the other way. It's quite a deal. Guys go down there just to see what's going on, but they got government's broke, so that doesn't work so good either. You got.
Well, I guess we've talked your ear off, huh?
Yeah, we got our hour.
Okay.